Boxing Ego here. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon on the top of your screen to get notified when the latest new content drops. One. Keith one-time Thurman admits that a fight between him and Errol Spence Jr. would be like boxing's Super Bowl. Stay tuned. What up, fight world? It's your boy Ego and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also subscribe to the channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. If you want to become part of the gang notification gang, please hit the bell icon. Shout out to the super chats, the channel donations, the Venmo donations, and the Patreon family. We working. Now, Keith Thurman, I just did a video regarding an interview with Kevin Iole of Yahoo Sports that was conducted. It was a very good interview. And Keith Thurman took to his social media verified account, verified Keith Thurman Instagram account, and he posted something I thought it was very interesting, we'll say. The caption reads, "Me versus Errol Spence would be almost like a Super Bowl with the world watching one time. Watch the full interview with Yahoo Sports' Kevin Iole on my Facebook page." So I linked to it in the video I did, so you guys can check it out. I guess he has it on his Facebook page, so in multiple ways. And he posted a snippet of the video and the conversation from the interview. Now, I've said this and I've been on record for quite some time saying this. Boxing is a very unique sport in the sense of, like, boxers are very down to earth. Like, doing an interview with the boxer, you don't have to go through as many clearances in general. You know what I mean? And they're just real cool, down-to-earth people and stuff like that. But there are times, in my opinion, where I feel boxers need PR people in their ear at certain times before they do interviews, because they end up slipping up and saying certain things, and it doesn't necessarily make them look good. Do you know what I'm saying? And I see this all the time with boxers, and it's just like, I'm like, why would you say that in the interview? And this is not necessarily only geared at Keith Thurman. This is just in general. Boxers will say something and I can already tell how it's going to fare with the fans, and it's going to be something unfavorable. All right. And I kind of see that here with the Keith Thurman situation. Keith Thurman has already been on record saying in this interview that he's not fighting Jesse Vargas, most likely. He said that in multiple interviews, that that's not his comeback fight. He said this is a get back year. And he says in this interview, I might not even fight a top 10 guy because I want to ease my way back into this and ease my way back into fighting 2 times a year, because I haven't done that in a while. And he says later in the year, he's said in multiple interviews, later in the year, maybe I'll get a bigger fight like a Danny Garcia or a Sean Porter, but it probably won't be Errol Spence Jr. He says all of this really in this particular interview. He said it probably won't be Errol Spence Jr., who he named as the number 2 welterweight, right? He thinks it'll probably be maybe the later in the year fight, maybe a mandatory or something. So my thing is this, is, you know, Errol Spence wants to fight with you. He admitted in this interview that Errol Spence is number 2 welterweight, and he's impressive. He said this in multiple interviews. He's impressive versus Lamont Peterson. He's a good fighter. Kevin Iole's asking you about the Errol Spence Jr. fight, and out of this whole whatever 20-minute interview or whatever length of time it is, you choose an excerpt to put on your social media regarding the Errol Spence fight and that it would be the Super Bowl of boxing. Yet you say in this interview, and really every other recent interview, that you're not fighting him in 2018. You've said things like, Keith Thurman has said things like he's not a high priority. And someone, Michael Woods, asked him about the fight with Errol Spence. He was like, man, are you going to keep the fans waiting and salivating, or are we going to see in 2018? And he's like, not going to happen. We're not going to see. It's not going to happen in 2018, baby. This is a get back year. You know what I mean? So you've already crushed the fans' dreams of seeing that fight this year. So to me, again, back to the PR conversation, why would you put me versus Errol Spence would be like the Super Bowl? It doesn't, out of a whole 25-minute interview or whatever, that's the point you choose. But you already told us that you're depriving us of this particular fight this year. So that doesn't really make sense to me. Maybe you guys can make sense of it in the comment section. And then the last thing about the boxing game in general, with this whole let the fight marinate thing, I'm not a fan of that, because we know it's boxing. Unforeseen things happen. People can even win but look vulnerable, and that's going to take the fight down. You know what I mean? Let's say it could be any fight. Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor, even though Conor McGregor's not even a pure boxer. Let's say Conor McGregor had a rematch with Max Holloway in the UFC before, and we all knew he was going to fight Floyd Mayweather next, some kind of way, right? And then he looked vulnerable versus Max Holloway. Then the Mayweather-McGregor numbers wouldn't have done what they did. But Mayweather-McGregor, it did good numbers, very good numbers, and pay-per-view sales and stuff, because he was coming off of Floyd is Floyd, so he's undefeated. But Conor McGregor's last fight was a good performance against Eddie Alvarez, and I think he got like a second-round knockout, and he dominated the fight. You know what I mean? So things happen. Even if you win, you might look vulnerable in doing so. So things like that happen to the point where you could take a loss. You know what I mean? If Keith Thurman were to rematch either Danny Garcia or Sean Porter, like he's kind of constantly mentioned in the background about maybe fighting in mandatory, those aren't give me, I will 100% win those fights. Yeah, you could say he's the favorite, or he beat him once, maybe he could beat him again, but that's not a give me fight. And both of those guys want the rematch. You know what I'm saying? So they could play spoiler. It's not like a hand me fight, like, you know what I mean, a Rod Salka or something, where you're just guaranteed gonna be too strong and too much for them guys, because they pretty much gave you tough first fights. So I don't like this whole marinating business. And the other thing is, like, realistically speaking, the whole marinating there, unless you're doing Mayweather and Pacquiao what they were doing individually, like where they were in their own right, in their own regard, both doing 800,000 to 1 million plus every time they're on pay-per-view. They've been established pay-per-view stars. This whole marinating thing, the fights, I really don't see them growing much more than the desire that's present. You know what I'm saying? Like, what Keith Thurman, we know he's good. He beat Sean Porter, who was once beaten. He beat Danny Garcia. He has 2 belts. He's undefeated. You know what I mean? He has power. We know he's good. Same thing with Errol Spence. He's technician, body shots, confident, blah, blah, blah. Beat Kell Brook. So what more are they really going to show us to the point where it just hikes these fights up to some crazy level? Because to me, the only ways to really do that is if they did something like unbelievable or something. Like, let's say Errol Spence knocked out Pacquiao or something. You know what I mean? But most likely Pacquiao wouldn't even fight Errol Spence Jr., so he wouldn't be able to do that. Or let's say Miguel Cotto versus Errol Spence, or Keith Thurman versus Miguel Cotto, and they were to beat a legend like that, or did something to that caliber to the point where it's like, wow, we're really checking. They would have to take somebody who's already established with a huge fan base and people know him, and then make something into a reality for the fight to quote unquote marinate to the point where it's some completely different fight. Like, for example, I'm a realistic fan. Errol Spence beating Lamont Peterson, that's a solid win for him. But Matisse had already knocked Peterson out, and he had done it sooner than Errol Spence had done, which, you know, I mean, that happens. That's fine. Danny Garcia had technically already beat Lamont Peterson. So to me, a win like that is very solid, but it's not going to, how do I word this? Because I'm not trying to make it like I'm shitting on Spence's win over Peterson. I think it's a very good win, because I think Peterson is a respected and reputable fighter. But I guess what I'm saying is, a win like that over Lamont Peterson, most people kind of expected it, and it wasn't doing something that nobody had done before, and it wasn't like Lamont Peterson was the most active and this big pay-per-view massive star, to the point where I'm not hating on the win, but to the point where it's not going to make the Keith Thurman fight so much greater, where now all of a sudden, based off that sole performance, the Thurman versus Spence fight is going to do 2 million more viewership than it previously would have did. I don't see that. Same thing with, let's say Keith Thurman fights Jesse Vargas. Okay, Pacquiao just beat him a couple years ago. So Keith Thurman, if he were to fight Jesse Vargas and beat him, it's gonna help feed the beast and grow the fight to a degree, but not to the point where I would consider that win is taking Keith Thurman to this plateau where it's just like, whoa, he's about to fight Errol Spence next. Now, you look at the heavyweights, a little bit different. If Deontay Wilder knocks out Luis King Kong Ortiz, that is, in some people's mind, the biggest test he's ever faced. So if he gets past him and Joshua unifies with another champion who's currently undefeated, then that Joshua Wilder fight grows exponentially, because Joshua will have mandatories on his resume, Klitschko, and then a unification with another champion. You know what I'm saying? And then Wilder will have like the Bermain Taverns fights, and then also a fight with the guy who's considered the boogeyman. But if you look at the welterweight picture, unless it's like, let's say Keith Thurman or Errol Spence beat a Terrence Crawford, then they fought, okay, that would hike up the anticipation, because that would be almost like some Super 6 shit. You guys get what I'm saying? I don't know if I'm explaining it well enough for you guys, but bottom line is, what I'm saying is the whole stringing it out and making it wait, I don't see it doing all too much. And again, if it were, it would have to be, they would have to do something. Like, let's say Keith Thurman, Floyd Mayweather came back out of retirement and Keith Thurman beat him. Okay, now Keith Thurman with the victory over Floyd Mayweather, that's gonna bring the Errol Spence Jr. fight, because if you just beat Floyd, no one's done that in 20 years. You know what I mean? So naturally the Thurman Spence fight would be bigger, but it would take something very fantastical like that to happen for this fight to be catapulted into some another level, where if now, because it marinated and stalled out, it's so much bigger. So bottom line, I guess what I'm trying to say is Thurman Spence, they're both doing well for themselves. They're both champions. This is pretty much as good as it is gonna get that I see. You know what I mean? Cotto's retired. Pacquiao just lost to Jeff Horn. You know what I mean? So unless either guy beats like a Crawford or Floyd Mayweather or something like that, where it just really takes their brand to the next level, I don't see them like, oh, now the Thurman Spence fight is worth $8 million purses apiece. Like, I just don't see it. Yeah, I think it's a good, fun, healthy fight. It's a fight that either guy can win. But the whole waiting game, to me, if anything, you suffer more chance of hurting the fight than helping the fight. You know what I mean? If you, with all things considered, because like I said, I don't really see Crawford getting a shot at Thurman and Spence before Spence Thurman, just because they're on the same side of networks and promotionally speaking. You know what I mean? So who can Keith Thurman beat between now and letting the fight marinate to the point where now you fight Spence and you're gonna get so much more money? You know what I mean? Same thing with Spence. Who can Spence fight? You know what I mean? He already beat Kell Brook. He already beat Lamont Peterson. So who is he gonna fight to the point where you're like, wow, man, now the Keith Thurman fight is up? You know what I mean? It's just, I don't see it. And to me, it was kind of weird that it's like Thurman's teasing the fans now by using this excerpt from the interview talking about it's the Super Bowl. We know it's the Super Bowl. That's why we want to see it. You know what I mean? But it is what it is. Let me know your thoughts. Drop it in the comment section. Make sure you smash the like button as always. Hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video is Ego Son. So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button. And you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxing Ego, the future of boxing.